Thank you, UAW. Well, brothers and sisters, that is a hard act to follow. I want to thank Shawn and all of you for inviting me to be here to say a few words to you this morning. And I want to begin by just giving you some indication of what this campaign is about. In 2019, the UAW was on strike. You had a president of the United States, his name Donald Trump, did nothing for you. Kamala Harris walked the picket line with you. In 2023, you waged an historic strike, and for the first time in the history of the United States, you had a president who walked the picket line with you, Joe Biden. And you had a vice president at his side who supported you. Now, if that is not a difference, I don't know what a difference is. And I'm proud to be here with the UAW today. And let me tell you why. It's not just the incredible work that Shawn and all of you are doing in raising the wages and fighting for your own members. You're doing more than that. I don't know that you even know that. You are an inspiration for workers all across this country. When you guys took on the greed, when you took on the greed of the automobile industry, and you said to America, there is something wrong when you got the CEOs of this company making tens of millions of dollars a year, while some of the people working in the factories were making 16, 17 bucks an hour. All over this country, people nodded their heads. And they said, Shawn is right. UAW is right. We got to take on this bloody corporate greed that's destroying America. And you became an inspiration to other workers and other unions who said, you know what, when you stand up and fight, you can win. Teamsters did the same. Longshoremen did the same. CWA did the same. And all across this country, young people now understand that if you want to make it to the middle class, you got to organize, join a union, and fight for a decent contract. So I want to thank you. That is what the UAW did. You inspired working people all across this country, and millions of people are grateful for your strength. And it's not only the corporate greed that people in this country are furious about, seeing the very, very rich get richer while working people are struggling. A few years ago, when we went through this terrible COVID experience, the nature of what this economy is about became true to every person in this country. I'll never forget it. What we saw, and I was around the country talking to people, we saw working people going into factories, driving buses, going in and doing their work in hospitals, putting their lives on the line to keep the economy going. Heroes and heroines, the likes of which we have never seen. And there are stories of workers during that pandemic who would sleep in their cars rather than come home to their families because they feared they may have had the virus and they want to spread it to their kids and their wives. That is courage, and that is heroism, that is patriotism. And then you had the CEOs, while workers were keeping the economy going, putting their lives on the line. You saw CEOs going to their private homes someplace, rural America, going to their fancy offices and making huge profits during that time. Workers died and the CEOs made huge compensation packages and corporations made huge profits. And people said, is that really what America is supposed to be about? I got to go to work to feed my family. And then the large corporations make out like bandits and the CEOs work in safety. And the word got around all over America that in the richest country in the history of the world, it's time that we had an economy and a government that worked for all of us, not just the people on top. You know, Shawn mentioned a moment ago what is obviously true. There's a lot of anger in this country. And sadly, while people have a right to be angry, it's unfortunate that too often they're getting angry at the wrong people. I know it's easy to beat up on poor people, easy to beat up on people of another color, another language. That's easy. But what the UAW has shown, it's harder, but it's more important to take on big money interests who really have the power. So you know why people are angry in this country? Because we, at this moment in American history, have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. We have more concentration of ownership than we have ever had in the history of the United States. Fewer and fewer large corporations own virtually every sector of our economy. We have more corporate greed than we have ever had in the history of this country. Want to know about inflation? Take a look at the record-breaking profits of major corporations who are sticking it to us at the grocery store and in other areas. Corporate greed is about 748 billionaires in America doubling their wealth and becoming $3 trillion richer since Donald Trump's tax breaks for the wealthy. How's that? Corporate greed is about CEOs making 300 times more than their average workers. Corporate greed is about a corrupt tax code that allows some billionaires and large profitable corporations to pay in a given year nothing in federal income tax. Corporate greed is about a corrupt tax system that enables billionaires to pay an effective tax rate lower than a UAW worker. My brothers and sisters, you know, I grew up in a working class family, and I learned as a kid what economic stress does to a family. I remember the arguments my parents had. Mother wanted to do something. Mother's dream in life was to own her own home. We lived in a rent-controlled apartment. Never achieved it. Wanted to do this, we couldn't do it. Stress, stress, stress. There is a reason today why working class people, and I say this with pain in my heart, why working class people die 10 years younger than the rich do. And you know what that is? It's not only about health care, that's part of it. It's about the stress that ordinary people experience every single day. 60% of Americans in the richest country in the history of the world are living paycheck to paycheck. All right, now I don't have to tell anybody in this room what living paycheck to paycheck is about. Rent goes up, can't afford to pay it. Car breaks down, can't afford to go to the auto guy and get it fixed. Kid gets sick, mother gets sick. worried about how I'm going to pay the doctor bill. Maybe I don't go to the doctor. God forbid I end up in the hospital. How in God's earth am I going to pay for a $100,000 bill from the hospital? And day after day, working people live with that stress. And it breaks them physically and it breaks them emotionally. And there is no reason for that. In this, the richest country in the history of the world, there is no reason why we do not have a government and an economy that provides wealth for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And let me also tell you, and this is an incredible fact, that you don't see it on TV, you're not going to hear it discussed much in the halls of Congress. Today, the average American worker is making $40 a week less than he or she did in inflation accounted for dollars 50 years ago. You got that? Let me repeat it. Now, I want you to think for a moment. You guys who work in the industry, the technology that you are working with, as well as workers all over this country, has made you far, far more productive than people who had your jobs 50 years ago, right? You're producing a lot more. And yet, despite all of that technology, despite all of the increase in worker productivity, in real inflation accounted for wages, you're making less than your brothers and sisters did 50 years ago. Meanwhile, while we, the working class, is going nowhere in a hurry, the people on top in America have never, ever had it so good. In that 50-year period, there has been a $50 trillion redistribution of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. Workers getting poorer, people on top have never had it so good. You got it. So that's where we are. And what the UAW knows from its great history and from the leadership you have right now, you understand one basic fact, is that when you stand alone, you get nothing. When we stand united, we can win. And as a United States Senator, let me tell you what's going on in Washington. You got 80% of the Republican members of the House believe that we should make cuts to Social Security. I'm chairman of the committee that finally got the PRO Act passed out of committee. We didn't get one Republican vote. 11 Democrats voted yes, 10 Republicans voted no. If Donald Trump is elected president, he will veto our efforts to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. And I want to talk, as Shawn raised this issue. No secret, there are union members, I don't know why, I don't know how, but there are union members around this country who are thinking about voting for Donald Trump. So let me be clear. When Trump was president, his Labor Department prevented millions of workers from receiving overtime pay by lowering the overtime threshold from the Obama administration. And that should not come as a surprise to anybody, given the fact that Trump, I don't know if you saw that, recently admitted that he hated, as a private employer, paying overtime to his workers. He hated it. That's what he said. So for all of those union people who are thinking about voting for Trump, understand that when he was president, he appointed a notorious union buster, Peter Robb, as the general counsel of the NLRB, turning the agency's mission to protect workers into one of protecting corporate America. In fact, Trump's NLRB quickly moved on every item on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's top 10 corporate interest wish list. Got it? So as president, he supported a National Labor Relations Board that was there for corporations, not for workers. In addition, the flooding the court with judges beholden to corporate interest, Trump appointed Eugene Scalia as Secretary of Labor, who built his career in the private sector representing unscrupulous employers while fighting against worker health and safety protections, retirement security, and collective bargaining rights. That is what Trump did when he was president. And as you all know, Trump's signature legislative achievement, what he's proud. He's in Pennsylvania today. I understand he's there with that other great lover of unions, Elon Musk. And his great legislative achievement when he was president was to pass a $2 trillion tax cut bill that provided 83% of the benefits to the top 1% and large corporations. And having given away so much to the very rich, he's coming back and he wants to do it even in bigger numbers for his wealthy friends. Brothers and sisters, our job in the next 4 or 5 weeks is to elect Kamala. And it's to defeat Trump. But it's more than that. What we have got to do, and the UAW is there, you are leading that effort, we have got to have a vision of where this great country can go. That's what our job is. And that vision, in my view, is that we got to grow the trade union movement, because you in the trade union movement is the antidote to the incredible economic and political power of the 1%. Now they have enormous economic power, and right now they're putting billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process. Who's going to stand up to them? Who has the, I'll do my job, but you got to do your job. So that means that at a time when unions in America are more popular, more widely supported by the American people than ever before, we have got to finally pass the PRO Act to make it easier for workers to join unions. Brothers and sisters, federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Millions of our brothers and sisters are working for $9, $10, $11 an hour. Nobody makes it on those wages. We got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage at least $17 an hour. And I'll tell you something else. And people thought that Shawn and the UAW are a little bit crazy about raising this in your contract negotiations. You talked about a 32-hour work week, didn't you? And the issue that you raised is an issue that's resonating all over the country. Why is that? Because we are looking at a technological revolution in terms of artificial intelligence and robotics. And you saw that just with the longshoremen strike right now. All right, the jobs that all Americans are going to do are going to be radically changed in the coming years. Who's going to benefit from it? Just the corporate CEOs? All right, we have got to make sure that that new technology, that increase in worker productivity benefits the working class in this country, not just the people on top. So when Shawn and the UAW said, you know what, if we're producing more, we don't want all the profits to go to the people on top, what about reducing the work week? What about more time for family, for friends? And that's an issue that we've got to bring to the fore. The other issue that you raised, I remember we did a hearing with one of your, I don't know if she's here or not, one of your members. She came before our hearing, we were talking about pensions. And she said, you know, my grandfather, I think it was, worked with the UAW, one of the plants, and he's retired now, and he has a good defined benefit pension plan. And over the years, corporate America has ripped those defined benefit pension plans away from working people. It's time to bring them back. Brothers and sisters, it is not a radical idea, not a far-left idea, to say that when you're retired, you should be able to retire with dignity and not have to worry. So I thank the UAW for raising that issue, which is resonating all across this country. And when we talk about older people, we also have to understand that half of older Americans today have no retirement savings. Now, I got Republicans, 80% of them in the House of Representatives, they think it's a good idea to cut Social Security, maybe raise the retirement age. All right, we have a slightly different perspective. We're not going to cut Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security benefits. And you do that by lifting the cap on taxable income so that billionaires start paying their fair share into the Social Security Trust Fund. And I'll tell you something else, brothers and sisters, again, not widely discussed. There is one nation, one wealthy nation on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. You're living in it. We are going to make the fight to finally bring forth the day when every man, woman, and child in this country can go to the doctor and, if necessary, go to the hospital without having to worry about out-of-pocket costs. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to some guy from Denmark who was in Washington. I said, what happens when you get sick? Go to the doctor. Do you have to pay anything? Looks at me like I'm crazy. Of course, they sign your name. What happens when you end up in the hospital? No, we don't have to pay anything. They spend half as much per capita as we do on health care. The function of a rational health care system is quality care for all, not huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And brothers and sisters, when we talk about politics, I believe that what democracy is about is one person, one vote, not billionaires through their super PACs buying elections. That means we got to end this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And as the UAW has been fighting for a very long time, we need trade policies in this country which benefit American workers and the workers around the world, not the bloody CEOs of these large corporations. No more race to the bottom, a race to the top. So brothers and sisters, we got a lot of work in front of us. And there's no group in America that is doing it better than the UAW. As I said earlier, in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we should not have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. We should not be the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. We should not be the only major country not to guarantee paid family and medical leave. We should not have millions of our people working starvation wages. We should not have a corrupt political system in which billionaires buy elections. Brothers and sisters, it is not utopian. It is not radical to say that all of our kids deserve quality education from child care through college. Not a radical idea to say the kids who are good with their hands should be able to get the training they need to be welders and electricians and carpenters without going broke. And finally, it is not a radical idea to say that every man, woman, and child in our country deserves decent housing that they can afford and deserves decent wages and benefits. This is not a radical idea, but what we have got to do is not just elect Kamala. We have got to build that grassroots movement led by the trade unions in this country to tell the people on top that we will no longer accept their greed, that this country belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. Thank you all.